Jim and Terry Show, two retired guys with an opinion found at the bottom of a mug of coffee. One retired guy reporting in for duty. The other is unavailable to make this podcast, so off we go. Solo podcast. The topic today is nuns. Quote, N-O-N-E-S, unquote. Nuns, that category of belief that is neither this nor that. It is unaffiliated. It is not Christian, not Buddhist, not Muslim, not Jewish, not Hindu. It is the nots of belief. It is the ones who say, I'm not convinced by anything at the moment, or I choose that this is what I am going to embrace, which is non-affiliation, non-belief. And that is the highest growing category in all three areas, well, the three areas that I'm looking at. It's the US, Canada, and Europe. And it's trying to posit the notion that perhaps, I know there was some assertion by Christians, by fundamentalists, by evangelicals, that evangelicalism was on the rise. The Charlie Kirks of the world were Turning Point USA. You're going to turn it around. It's all going to be, rah, rah, sis, boom, bah for faith, the resurgence of Christian faith, the New Apostolic Reform, and other fundamentalists, Christian nationalist associations are all on the go, the charging forward. And in my previous podcast, I mentioned that I was sort of part of that generation in the late 70s and 80s on the road to the 2000s until Y2K was an abrupt turning point for a number of reasons. But it was the heyday of what I called the Americanization of the evangelical church, or the Americanization of faith as a global manifestation. The positive side might be to say, well, isn't that great that good people are getting out there and making their beliefs known? And at some point, I would say yes. But as I argue in my book, during the colonial period, when you go out with guns and shackles and you trying to preach the gospel at the same time dominating and eradicating competition, it's pretty hard to make the case that you're doing something good. So we have a lot of issues with colonialism, and that's including the whole notion of Rudyard Kipling's white man's burden to convert the heathen, and the heathen was usually identified as in a faraway place, as in non-white colored skin. And that was the mission of the church back 200 years ago. Is it still the mission? Well, the article in the Atlantic magazine suggested that the new battleground is taking on people who believe differently and otherizing. That term is, of course, when you pick on those who disagree with you. You look the same, you talk the same culture, shared values, you believe in truth, justice in the American way, or variations on apple pie and mom, but you don't get it together when it comes time to make claims about truth, and the source of truth being non-falsifiable claims of belief. And all of a sudden, anybody can be a target because God told you. The old Flip Wilson, the devil made me do it. Well, you can justify an awful lot of stuff by pointing the finger and wagging the tongue at other people. And the proof is in the pudding. Let your light so shine. Yeah, so shine before who? Before people around you. That's your neighbor across the fence, across the street. That they might see your good works, not your naysaying, evil, vilifying, demonizing, but your good works. And maybe then they will be convinced of the merits of what you're trying to sell them. Well, I just wanted to explore and touch base with some critical thinking in this area because I watched a video of Daniel Dennett, who was one of the old early vocal atheists challenging fundamental Christian values back in the 80s. And early 2000s. And I watched a video of him discussing with D'Souza. D'Souza, of course, is the, 2,000 Mules or 1,000 Mules or something, the claimed election fraud supporting Donald Trump. This is a Christian claiming false things and making stuff up. And when you do that and you hide behind Christian as a label, you've wrecked things for a lot of other people. So please be careful with what you claim to be true, what you assert to be true. And if you don't have evidence, stop saying it. So Trump is back on the bandwagon saying election fraud. Chinese did it. Well, no, Russia did it, to whatever extent is provable. Robert Mueller wrote it all in a report and had 30 some odd Russian entities that he could identify. He never pointed the finger directly at Trump, but he said there's enough evidence to go after it if you want a provable case. And that got dropped, and you have to ask yourself why. And it seems to be some sort of support base from the Project 2025 crowd, the Southern Baptist Conference, those Christian fundamental evangelicals who still throw their lot in behind Trump and wear the T-shirt proudly, Jesus is my savior, Trump is my president. Look for the book coming hopefully this fall to an Amazon bookstore near you, as in online distribution, maybe available through my website. But I digress. What am I looking at? I am looking at specifically the demographics through the Pew Research Center and the Public Religion Research Institute, and some academic studies like the Ryan Burge study, the General Social Survey and Cooperative Election Study, who've mapped out the meteoric rise of the nuns, not only in the US, in Canada, and the EU. It's not Muslims. It's not Jews. It's not Hindus. It's the nuns who are growing. And you have to ask yourself, well, why is that? Well, if you're the good and bad, God and devil, you might be convinced that it's the rise of Satan. Satan's doing this. We are in the end times for sure, because this is out of control and it's ungodly. The woke stuff is ungodly. Equal rights for people who disagree with you is ungodly. Immigrants who escaped persecution, who came as refugee seekers, they're the ungodly. They're the ones Trump pointed to in his speeches as being the evil ones perpetrating gross crimes in America. Yeah, not so much. We need to examine all this stuff. Anyway, what is the data that we can point to? Well, we can point to, and there's a CBS one that explores all this, nearly a quarter of the world's population no longer affiliates with any religion, said the CBS report. What does it break down to? Well, in the United States, 62% of adults identify as Christian, and non-affiliated, the nuns, are about 30% of the population. Muslims, about 1%. In Canada, Christians are about 53.3%. The nuns are about 35%. Muslims are about 5%. In Europe, Christians are 67%. The nuns are 25%. And Muslims are 6%. So when we look at the data, this is a big change from, say, the turn of the century, from the post-war era, 1950s, to the present, despite the big push by evangelicals in the United States especially. It seems like the nuns are the source of most growth in belief systems in Canada, the United States, and the EU. So what are we doing? I think the video with Daniel Dennett argues that complex biological systems arose via natural selection, and D'Souza is arguing for creation. And when the audience takes a look at the data, science or creation, they tend to follow the data, unconvinced by unfalsifiable claims. It is complicated. Up to you. Do your own research. Okay, we'll see how that goes.